How to make a decision. In this video, we're going to look at why some decisions are so hard and what we can do if we're having trouble coming up with a decision. And we're going to learn a decision-making process that can help us make decisions that we can be comfortable with and confident in. Often, it's difficult to come to a decision because of the stakes involved. The higher the stakes, the more careful we tend to be when making a decision. But even seemingly insignificant, low-stakes, day-to-day decisions, like what to wear or what to eat, can sometimes seem overwhelming. Sometimes decisions are hard because we feel like we don't have enough information to make an informed decision. Other times we have too much information and just don't know how to make sense of it all. Or there can be too many options to choose from. Or we can't find any options that we're happy with or that meet our criteria. And sometimes when we're struggling with a decision, it's not the actual decision that's so challenging. Our indecisiveness is a symptom of something else. Like decision overload, where we're overwhelmed by the number of decisions we need to make, and we just can't deal with another one. I just don't know. I've had such a rough day, I can't decide anything else right now. Or we're afraid our decision is going to disappoint someone, so we keep trying to put it off. Have you decided if you're going to spend the holidays at my parents' with me? I don't know yet. Let me think about it some more. Or we avoid making a decision because we don't know how to act on it. I know I need to let someone go, but I just never know how to break the news. Or don't want to have to act on it. As long as I haven't decided, I don't have to fire anyone yet. Or we might delay making a decision because we're procrastinating whatever we have to do next. As soon as I get dressed, I'm going to have to start that terrible commute and then deal with all that crap at work. Or our difficulty making a decision could be related to anxiety about something connected with the decision. For example, we're getting ready to travel and having trouble deciding what to pack, being really anxious about it. But it's not really the decision about what to pack that's causing our anxiety. We're anxious about traveling, and we don't have much control over the aspects of traveling that are actually causing our anxiety. So we redirect our anxiety onto our packing, because that's something we have control over. But unfortunately, there is no perfect way to pack that's going to make our travel anxiety disappear. And making decisions can often be really hard if we're depressed, for many of the reasons above. So do you recognize yourself in any of these? Now let's look at some of the ways we make decisions and see if any of these sound familiar. A pros and cons list, which could be an actual written list, or it could just be a process we go through in our heads. Or we go with our guts or intuition and choose whatever feels right. Or we make decisions based on our values and goals. Or we make impulsive or emotional decisions and choose whatever offers the most instant gratification or makes us feel better right away. I can't deal with all of this stress. I quit. Or we hate making decisions so much and just want to avoid them that we go with the first option that's at all tolerable just to get the decision over and done with so we don't have to think about it anymore. Whatever, this is fine. Or we can spend a long time agonizing over decisions, continuing to mull things over and unable to come to a decision, even though we've looked at it from every angle multiple times and already spent more time on the decision than is warranted based on the importance of the decision. I should get a sandwich, but I can make sandwiches at home. But this sandwich looks really good. But I'm really not that hungry. Maybe I should just get a muffin or a bowl of soup. No, sandwich it is. But do I really feel like a sandwich? Or we make a decision and keep changing our minds, second-guessing ourselves and going back and forth between different choices. Or make a decision and keep asking others for reassurance that we've made the right choice. Should I wear my navy suit? Are you sure that one's okay? Or maybe we ask someone else to decide for us. Can you please just tell me which one to wear? So in most cases, making a good decision is going to involve coming up with a list of options, going through the pros and cons of each, while listening to our guts and intuition, and then making a decision based on our goals and values. So let's say we've been offered a new job, and we're trying to decide whether to take the new job or stay at our current jobs. So first, we take some time to think about all the various options we have and write them down. And then we just go through these options and see which are worth further consideration. So let's say we've narrowed it down to just 2 candidates worth considering. And so now we make a pros and cons list for each. So we start with our first option, and we come up with a list of pros of staying at the current job and cons of staying at the current job. And then also pros of not staying at the current job and cons of not staying at the current job. And then we look at the second option and consider the pros of taking the new job and the cons of taking the new job, as well as the pros of not taking the new job and the cons of not taking the new job. So now we look over our pros and cons list with the intention of selecting the option that scores highest. But often our pros and cons lists don't point to a clear winner. There are pros and cons to each option that are relatively equal and seem to balance each other out. So what do we do now? Well, we can go back to our list of options and see if there's another option we overlooked that didn't make our original list. But assuming there's nothing we left out and there is no better option that we've overlooked, then what often happens is we keep going through the pros and cons, hoping we've missed something and that if we keep thinking about it long enough, eventually the right decision will become clear. But this usually just leads to us thinking in circles, or changing our minds back and forth again, and in the end, still never getting any closer to making a decision. So then the next step is to try listening to our guts and intuition and see if they're telling us anything. So what does this mean? Well, sometimes we just get a feeling about something. And so if our intuition is pointing us in a certain direction, then we can factor that into our decisions. So maybe when we went for the interview, we just had a bad feeling about the new place. Our intuition was telling us something was off. So maybe that points us towards staying at our current jobs. Or maybe our guts are telling us, no matter how long we stay at our current jobs, things just aren't going to get any better. And so that helps tip the scale towards accepting the new job. And then before making the decision, we want to consider our goals and values. So maybe our goal right now is to advance our careers as much as possible. And one of our values is we're not going to let fear rule our lives. So we single out the things on our pros and cons list related to these goals and values, and maybe assign them a little more weight. Or maybe one of our goals is wanting to work less and spend more time with our families. And one of our values is we don't want to decide things just based on money. And so we single out the pros and cons related to these. And so considering our goals and values can bring some clarity to our pros and cons lists and can help us make a decision. But let's say we've done all this and we're still no closer to being comfortable making a decision. Now what do we do? So at this point, first we need to realize that we've been using a solid decision-making process and we've spent enough time on this decision that whatever we choose is going to be a reasonable decision and we're making a good choice. But still, how do we actually make that decision? Well, sometimes we can try on a decision for a while. So maybe we're leaning towards taking the new job, but still not ready to commit. And so we decide to try acting as if we've taken the new job for a while and just see what that feels like. We visualize ourselves in our new jobs, tell our friends we're pretty sure we're going to take the new job, and just talk it through a bit with other people. And just see how it feels living in that decision for a while. And if it feels comfortable, that can help us feel more comfortable committing to that decision. And we can look back at our goals and values. And maybe we decided, I promised myself not to let anxiety rule my life. But there's nothing so compelling about this new job that means I'm letting myself down if I don't take it. It's okay to stay where I am for now while I try to find a better opportunity. Or, related to our goals and values, we can ask ourselves, if I choose this option, will I be able to accept the results of my decision even if they're not what I wanted? And maybe we think, at least I know what my current job is like, and if I stay here and things don't get any better, it's not great, but it's tolerable. And if I have to stay here for a while longer, I know I can manage that. But my new job could be a lot worse, and I don't know if I'd be able to deal with that. So I'm going to go with the option that has the least possible downside, or the highest floor. And I'm going to stay at my current job because, worst case scenario, I know I'll still be okay working there for a while. Or we could choose the option that has the highest ceiling, or best possible outcome. I know what my current job is like, and I know it's never going to get much better than this, but this new job could be so much better. And so we use that as the basis of our decision. And if we still can't decide, we need to understand that if we're unable to make a decision, then by default, we're actually deciding that things are going to stay as they are. The job is going to get offered to someone else before we decide whether or not to take it. So in the end, one way or another, a decision is going to be made. And sometimes it seems more comfortable to allow that decision to be made for us as a result of our inaction. Because then if things don't work out the way we wanted, we don't feel as responsible for the results, since technically we didn't choose that option. But the flip side to this is that then we can start to feel like we don't have much control over our lives. So what if we still can't decide? Well, when we get this stuck, often one of the issues is that before we're willing to commit to a decision, we're looking for some sort of certainty about what the results of the decision will be. Which makes sense, because it's going to be the results of our decisions that ultimately impact our lives. But often decisions involve situations that are inherently uncertain. There's just no way to know in advance if we'd like the new job any better than our current jobs. And so the amount of certainty we're seeking before we feel comfortable making a decision is never going to be possible. And so here the issue isn't with our decision making, but with our difficulties accepting uncertainty and managing the stress and anxiety and worry associated with that uncertainty. And we'll look at some ways to help us manage these challenges in a minute. But first, let's talk about uncertainty regarding the results of our decisions. So in a moment, I'm going to flip a coin, and you need to decide whether you want to choose heads or tails. And if you need a moment to think over your decision, you can pause the video. And here we go. So did you make the right decision? Well, if you chose tails, you got the result that you wanted. But does that mean if you decided to pick heads, you made a bad choice? Well, no, because in this example, either option was a perfectly reasonable choice. Because each outcome was equally likely, and you had absolutely no reason to choose one option over the other. And so based on the information available, there was no way to know to choose tails. And so choosing tails wasn't a better decision than choosing heads. It just led to a better result. But you had absolutely no control over what that result was going to be when you made your decision. And did you spend much time making your decision to choose heads or tails? Hopefully not, because there was nothing to be gained by spending any time on that decision. Because unless you can see into the future, there was no information available that would have been relevant to your decision one way or another. Now, not all of our decisions are coin flips, but a lot of the time when we're having trouble coming up with a decision, it's because the various alternatives are so close that they might as well be coin flips. And no matter how long we spend researching our decisions, there's usually going to be an element of chance influencing the results that we're not going to be able to eliminate. So in most cases, there's no way to know what the right decision, if we're judging based on results, is going to be. So in order to come up with good decisions, we need to focus on using a good decision-making process, like the one we've been learning, rather than trying to get certainty about what the results of our decisions will be. Because, to at least some extent, the results of our decisions are going to be beyond our control, and all we really have control over is the process we use to make our decisions. And now, instead of flipping a coin, I'm going to roll a die. And you have to decide whether you think I'm going to roll a 2 or below, or a 3 or above. And you can pause the video if you need time to make your decision. I'm going to roll the die in 3, 2, 1. So did you make the right decision? Well, if you picked 2 or below, you got a good result, but you made the wrong decision. Because there's 6 numbers on the die, I'm going to roll a 3 or above 4 out of 6 times. So 2/3 of the time, it's going to be 3 or above. So in this case, using a good decision-making process, the laws of math and probability, the correct decision is clear. We should always pick 3 or above. But the thing is, 1/3 of the time, I'm going to roll a 2 or below, and you're going to get a bad result, even if you made the right decision. So the point here is that we can make what's clearly the right decision, and it still leads to a bad result. And we can make what's clearly the wrong decision, yet have it lead to a favorable result. And so this is why we need to focus on the process of making the decision, rather than worrying about having certainty about what the eventual results of our decisions are going to be. Because it's the process that we have control over, and there's always going to be some uncertainty surrounding the results. And one last thing about results is that, in most cases, even if we're not happy with the result of the decision we made, we'll rarely know what the results would have been if we'd made the other decision. So if we take this job, for example, and we don't like it, that doesn't necessarily mean we got the worst result. Because if we'd stayed in our current jobs, maybe things would have ended up just as bad or even worse. And so if we start second-guessing our decisions based on the results and telling ourselves things like, I knew I should have gone with the other decision. If only I'd gone with that, things would be so much better now. How could I have been so stupid? I'm ruining my life. We usually have no way of knowing if this is actually true or not, and are just making ourselves feel bad for no reason. Okay, but we still haven't decided whether or not to take the job. What do we do now? Well, at this point, it doesn't really matter what we choose. We're not going to find any more information that's going to make our decision any clearer, so we just need to pick something. And then once we've made our decision, the final step is that if we're still feeling anxious about the decision and finding the uncertainty difficult to tolerate, we need to focus on managing our anxiety and accepting the uncertainty, rather than second-guessing our decisions and going through the whole decision-making process over and over and over again, hoping we'll find a decision that eliminates all anxiety and all uncertainty, because that's never going to happen. So how do we do this? How do we manage our anxiety and learn to accept uncertainty? Well, I have a number of videos with strategies that can help that I'll link to in the description. And we can also use our less significant decisions, when there's not so much at stake, to practice managing our anxiety around decisions and uncertainty. I'm going to order that sandwich. And then if I start rethinking my decision or worrying that I've made the wrong decision, I'm just going to live with it and tell myself it's okay. I've used a good decision-making process in coming up with this decision, and I've come to this decision after taking into account all of the information available to me, so I know I've made a reasonable decision, and whatever the results, I can live with them. And as we become more comfortable making these smaller decisions and managing the anxiety and uncertainty around them, they start to cause us less anxiety, and we're building skills that transfer over into our bigger, more important decisions, where we're feeling even more anxiety and more discomfort with the uncertainty about the results of these decisions. But this anxiety and uncertainty is somewhat more manageable now as a result of the practice and experience we've gained through our smaller decisions. So some decisions are always going to be difficult, but as long as we have a good decision-making process in place and understand that there's almost always going to be at least some uncertainty surrounding the results of our decisions, and have some practice from our smaller decisions managing the anxiety around decisions, then we've prepared ourselves to be able to make any types of decisions that might arise, even though we may still experience some anxiety making the decisions and accepting the uncertainty surrounding the results. And if you like this video and would like to support my channel by joining my channel, becoming a patron, or through a one-time donation, I really appreciate it, and please check out the donation links in the description. Or you can just help me out by liking this video and subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos when they come out.